Hello everyone and welcome to this lesson. We're going to be talking about cause and effect paragraphs. Cause and effect is a common way to organize information in a text. Paragraphs structured as cause and effect explain reasons why something happened or the effects of something. These paragraphs can be ordered as causes and effects, or as effects and then causes. The cause and effect text structure is generally used in expository and persuasive writing modes. To put it another way, when an author gives reasons why something happened, he or she is explaining what caused an effect, or like the reasons are causes and the thing that happens is the effect. Also, when a writer explains the results of an action, he or she is explaining the effects of a cause, or results are effects and the thing that occurs is the cause. The cause and effect text structure is used so commonly that you've probably written a paragraph using it and not noticed. Let's look at an example. Many people think that they can get sick by going into cold weather improperly dressed. However, illnesses are not caused by temperature. They are caused by germs. So while shivering outside in the cold probably won't strengthen your immune system, you're more likely to contract an illness indoors because you will have a greater exposure to germs. In this example, the paragraph explains how germs cause illnesses. The germs are the cause in the paragraph, and the illness is the effect. Here is another example of a paragraph that is written using the cause and effect text structure. Students are not allowed to chew gum in my class. While some students think that I am just being mean, there are many good reasons for this rule. First, some irresponsible students make messes with their gum. They may leave it on the bottoms of desks, drop it on the floor, or put it on other people's property. Another reason why I don't allow students to chew gum is because it is a distraction. When they are allowed to chew gum, students are more worried about having it, popping it, chewing it, and snapping it rather than listening, writing, reading, and learning. This is why I don't allow students to chew gum in my class. Identifying a text written using the cause and effect pattern of organization can be tricky. In most stories, events and the plot occur for various reasons. This can be mistaken for the cause and effect text structure. However, stories are organized chronologically, and the information in each passage is more likely to be organized by the time in which each event occurred. On the contrary, cause and effect passages usually focus on explaining reasons why something occurs or occurred, and time will usually not pass in these paragraphs. These signal words indicate that information in a paragraph is organized as cause and effect. Let's look at the words. Because, as a result, resulted, caused, affected, since, due to, and effect signal a cause and effect organization. In composition, cause and effect is a method of paragraph development in which a writer analyzes the reasons for and or the consequences of an action, event, or decision. A cause and effect paragraph can be organized in various ways, but it needs the three main parts of a paragraph: a topic sentence, some supporting sentences, and a concluding sentence. Use cause and effect in paragraphs when you're tracking the development of one situation or event out of another. Cause and effect is an analytical mode of paragraph development that attempts to show how events are influenced by or caused by others. In essence, the cause is the thing that makes other things happen. Effect refers to what results. It is the what happened next in the text that results from a preceding cause. To put it concisely, cause is the why something happened, and effect is the what happened. In English, we use several different words to show cause and effect. Examples are for, because, as, since, therefore, hence, as a result, consequently, due to, because of, as a result of, and etc. So, for example, you can say, he must be asleep for there is no light in this room. The purpose of the cause and effect essay is to determine how various phenomena relate in terms of origins and results. Sometimes the connection between cause and effect is clear, but often determining the exact relationship between the two is very difficult. Now let's look at some transitional expressions for cause and effect. Now remember, to show causes or to show why something happened, you can use these transitional expressions. Let's take a look at them. The first cause, the second cause, or the third cause, the first reason, yet another factor, because, is caused by, results from. And to show effects or show what happened, you can use one important effect, another result, a third outcome, as a result, consequently, then, next, therefore, thus, and so. Let's take a look at some phrases and expressions that can help you to identify cause and effect, or even develop your own cause and effect statements. Please pause your video here, take a look at these phrases and expressions, and try to fill in the gaps. Then play the video again. Now let's look at apostrophes. The apostrophe mark has three main uses in English: to make contractions, to make nouns and some pronouns possessive, and to make letters of the alphabet plural. Let's look at contractions first. An apostrophe shows where letters are missing in a contraction. Look at these examples. Isn't, is not. She's, she is, or she has, and so on. We use contractions in conversation and in informal writing, such as letters to friends. But we usually do not use them in formal academic and business writing. Let's look at possessives now. Possessive words show ownership. In the phrase Maria's book, Maria's is a possessive noun, showing that Maria is the owner of the book. In English, we can show ownership with nouns in two ways. We can use an of the phrase and say the name of my friend, or we can use an apostrophe plus s and say my friend's name. Look at these examples. The speed of the runner, or the runner's speed. The orders of the doctor, or the doctor's orders. And the complaints of my neighbor, or my neighbor's complaints. In general, we use an apostrophe or an apostrophe plus s more often when the owner is a living being. And we use the of phrase more often when the owner is a non-living thing. We prefer, for example, to say the dog's leg, but the leg of the table. Sometimes you can write a possessive either way, the bank's president or the president of the bank. When the owner's name is given, we don't have a choice. We must use an apostrophe or an apostrophe plus s. Look at these examples. Maria's book. You should say Maria's book, not the Book of Maria. Or you should say the Smith's house, not the house of the Smiths. Besides nouns, we also make indefinite pronouns possessive. Indefinite pronouns are the words like someone, anyone, somebody, anybody, everyone, everybody, no one, nobody, and more. Look at these examples. Someone's jacket, anybody's mistake. Let's look at some rules to make nouns and indefinite pronouns possessive. You should add an apostrophe plus s to singular nouns and to plural nouns that don't end in s. Look at the singular nouns and plural nouns examples. You should also add an apostrophe plus s to indefinite pronouns, like someone's jacket or nobody's fault. You should also add an apostrophe plus s to abbreviations, like NAFTA's success or the UN's members. You should add an apostrophe alone to plural nouns ending in s. For example, engineering students' club. Now some tips. Use an apostrophe s to make letters of the alphabet plural. For example, there are 4 s's and 4 i's in the word Mississippi. Or the teacher gave 10 A's and 2 F's last semester. Don't confuse it's and its. Its is a contraction of it is. Its is a possessive adjective. Possessive adjective like my, your, our, his, her, its, their never have apostrophes. Let's look at these examples. It's hot today. The book lost its cover. Don't confuse the contraction of a noun plus is and the possessive form of the noun. For example, John's sick today. This is John is sick today. And John's car is a Toyota. That means the car that belongs to John is a Toyota. And finally, don't use an apostrophe to make nouns plural. For example, it is the policy of many companies to hire student interns during the summer. Or the Smiths have a new baby daughter. A sentence fragment is an error involving punctuation. A sentence fragment is a group of words punctuated like a sentence, but lacking an independent clause. Because it lacks an independent clause, a sentence fragment is just a piece of a sentence. Here are some examples. Running along the beach, even though the movie won an Oscar. These so-called sentences are actually frauds. They begin with a capital letter and end with a period, but they lack an independent clause. Usually, a sentence fragment relates closely to the sentence that preceded it. The previous 2 examples might have appeared in the following contexts. I finally found that stray mutt, period, running along the beach, period. Now, this is a sentence fragment. Mary absolutely refused to go to the theater, period, even though the movie had won an Oscar. Now, to correct a sentence fragment, either connect it to an independent clause or add a subject and a verb to convert it to an independent clause. First, let's look at fragments that are connected to independent clauses. I finally found that stray mutt running along the beach. Or, Marie absolutely refused to go to the theater even though the movie had won an Oscar. Now, let's look at fragments converted to independent clauses by using periods. I finally found that stray mutt, period. It was running along the beach, period. Or, Marie absolutely refused to go to the theater, period. The movie had won an Oscar, period. Of the two types of changes shown, most readers would prefer the connection of the fragment to an independent clause. That solution provides smoother writing, avoiding the choppiness that results from converting each fragment to its own independent clause. More important, however, the first solution increases coherence. Connecting the fragment to an independent clause links the thought of the fragment to the thought of the independent clause. Are fragments always wrong? No, of course not. Fragments are common in speech and appear in all types of writing. Let's look at the 9 most important uses of the comma. First, use a comma after every item in a series except the last item. When I say in a series, I mean more than 2 items. For example, the ethics of contemporary surgery are often a problem for the patient, the doctor, and the patient's family. You probably already knew to put a comma after the first item, patient in this case. But why do you need one after the next to last item, the doctor? Consider this example. The ethics of contemporary surgery are often a problem for the patient, the doctor, and the hospital board, and the patient's family. Each comma tells your reader that you're moving to the next item in a series. If you omit a comma, you imply that you're still in the same item, a compound item, as in the previous example. However, if readers find only the end of your sentence, they have to reread to confirm the substance of your series. Providing the final comma helps readers understand where they are in a series, so they don't have to reread. Now, the question is the final comma necessary? Many magazines and newspapers apply the editorial policy that the final comma in a series isn't really necessary because readers can identify the final item in a series from context. In many cases, this policy works well. However, the final comma ensures that readers don't have to reread a sentence to verify the parts of the series. Forcing rereading is a hazard if you omit the final comma. For this reason, many authorities agree that using the final comma benefits efficient communications. Whichever editorial policy you choose to follow, be consistent. Omitting the final comma on some occasions but using it on others will throw readers off course completely because they can find no recognizable pattern. Inconsistency requires readers to recheck all your series. Let's look at some other comma rules now. You should use a comma before a coordinating conjunction that joins 2 independent clauses. For example, I never liked parsnips, comma, but my mother made me eat them. She thought they were great, comma, and she thought they would make me grow taller. Do not confuse a coordinating conjunction that joins 2 verbs with a coordinating conjunction that joins 2 independent clauses. For example, the parsnips tasted awful and looked like paste. No comma precedes the coordinating conjunction because it connects only the 2 verbs tasted and looked. Use a comma after a dependent clause that begins a sentence. For example, although Harriet tried as hard as she could, comma, she could not win even a fun run. Or because she couldn't run fast enough, comma, she couldn't have the free t-shirt for the first 200 runners crossing the finish line. Use a comma after a long phrase that begins a sentence. The word long is rather vague, of course, but usually you will wish to place a comma after an introductory phrase of 3 or more words. For example, even after a grueling night of writing, comma, I couldn't finish the paper. Or running to my next class, comma, I tried to think of an excuse to give my professor. Use commas to set off any word, phrase, or clause that interrupts the flow of the sentence. In other words, if you could set off a word or a group of words with parentheses or dashes but do not wish to, set off that word or group of words with commas. For example, my first excuse, comma, wild as it was, comma, didn't sound convincing. I had thought of several good excuses for not finishing my paper, comma, such as a computer error deleted my only draft. The excuse I settled on was quite good, comma, especially the part about the dog in the dormitory. The class, comma, together with the professor, comma, turned their heads as I plowed into the classroom. Notice that interrupters in the middle of sentences have commas on both sides. Use commas to set off non-restrictive clauses. What are restrictive and non-restrictive clauses? A restrictive clause is essential to defining whatever it modifies. If you have only one brother, you could say, my brother is meaner than I am. Because you only have one brother, no modifier is necessary to distinguish which brother you mean. But what if you have several brothers? Now you need to include a modifier that will restrict the meaning of brother to a particular brother. For example, my brother who's wearing a red motorcycle helmet is meaner than I am. The restrictive clause, who is wearing a red motorcycle helmet, is essential to defining brother, limiting any brother to the one wearing the helmet. You probably noticed that a restrictive clause is not an interrupter and therefore is not set off with commas. A non-restrictive clause is not essential to defining whatever it modifies. It just supplies additional information. Because it is not essential, you could omit it and everybody would still know who or what you're talking about. Thus, if you only have one brother, you could write this. My brother, comma, who's wearing a red motorcycle helmet, comma, is meaner than I am. Because you have only one brother, readers could omit the non-restrictive clause, who is wearing a red motorcycle helmet, and still know which person you're referring to. The word modified, brother, is not limited in any way by the clause. It is only described in more detail. You'll notice that we set off non-restrictive clauses with commas or parentheses or dashes, just as we do other interrupters. Thus, the presence or absence of commas with modifying clauses becomes quite important for how readers interpret what you write. For example, consider this statement. Authorities say that truckers who drive unsafe rigs cause most of the accidents on the beltway. Who causes most of the accidents? All truckers? No. The absence of commas tells us that the blame falls on truckers who drive unsafe rigs. Who drive unsafe rigs is a restrictive clause limiting all truckers to that portion with unsafe equipment. Now consider this example. The board members are not likely to question the research department's recommendations, comma, which are generally well prepared. A comma sets off which are generally well prepared, the non-restrictive clause that provides additional detail. In this case, one possible explanation for why the board members almost always accept recommendations from the research department. Is this essential information? No. The punctuation within this sentence indicates that the board members almost always accept recommendations from this particular department. Why they do so remains speculation. Use commas to set off a conjunctive adverb. This rule applies no matter where the conjunctive adverb appears within the sentence. If, like in this example, the conjunctive adverb is in the middle of the independent clause, it will have commas on both sides of it. Look at the example. The beautiful young princess kissed the frog, semicolon. His lily pad, comma, however, comma, started sinking when she stepped on it. Use a comma between coordinate adjectives unless they are joined by and. Coordinate adjectives are sets of adjectives that independently modify a noun. For example, the bulldog is noted for its wrinkled, flattened face. Both wrinkled and flattened modify face independently. That is not the case with cumulative adjectives. When an adjective's modification is cumulative, it modifies not only the noun, but also the whole adjective noun phrase it precedes. Cumulative adjectives work together to modify their noun. They cumulate or combine together as they get nearer to the noun to create a more specific meaning. For example, Alicia wore a red felt hat. Here, red modifies not just hat, but the phrase felt hat. Notice that no comma is used with cumulative adjectives. Now let's look at coordinate and cumulative adjectives. Distinguishing between coordinate and cumulative adjectives isn't always simple. However, because of the independence of coordinate adjectives, you can check for two characteristics that help identify them. Coordinate adjectives are reversible, whereas cumulative adjectives aren't. That is, flattened, wrinkled face works as well as wrinkled, flattened face, so it's reversible. On the other hand, felt red hat just sounds foolish and fits naturally between coordinate adjectives, but not between cumulative adjectives. Thus, you could write wrinkled and flattened face, but not red and felt hat. Of course, modifier chains can include both coordinate and cumulative adjectives. For example, the stands were full for the homecoming game, even though it was a cold, rainy autumn day. Cold and rainy are coordinates and are separated by a comma. However, both modify autumn day rather than just day. So there is no comma after rainy. You should use a comma to set off words in direct address. Words in direct address normally are names, but can be phrases used in place of names. For example, Christina, have you washed the dishes? Where are you going now, little sister? You look charming, Alicia, wearing that red felt hat. Notice that the word in direct address in this example has commas on both sides because it occurs in the middle of the sentence. Let's look at the semicolon. The semicolon is stronger than a comma, but weaker than a period. Let's look at the three most important uses of the semicolon. 1. Use a semicolon between two independent clauses closely related in meaning, but not joined by a coordinating conjunction. Here, we have two independent clauses that are closely related and there is no coordinating conjunction in the middle to separate them. Lee won some battles, semicolon, Grant won the war. Use a semicolon between two independent clauses when the second independent clause is joined to the first with a conjunctive adverb. For example, auto theft is a major national crime. semicolon. However, comma, people keep leaving their cars unlocked. If a conjunctive adverb is moved from the beginning of the second independent clause into the middle of it, the conjunctive adverb is then preceded by a comma instead of a semicolon. The semicolon, however, remains between the independent clauses. For example, most stolen cars are recovered, semicolon. Many, comma, unfortunately, comma, have been vandalized. When commas occur within one or more of the items in a series, use semicolons rather than commas to separate the items in the series. Look at this confusing example first. Key European air routes include stops in Lisbon, Portugal, Rome, Italy, Frankfurt, Germany, and Istanbul, Turkey. Readers with a good sense of world geography probably would understand this sample. However, you can make the reader's job easier by using semicolons to separate the major items in the series. For example, it would be better to write it this way. Key European air routes include stops in Lisbon, Portugal, Rome, Italy, Frankfurt, Germany, and Istanbul, Turkey. This way, readers won't have to reread to understand the structure of the series. In the writing process, the best way to organize a paragraph is to make an outline before you begin to write. An outline is like an architect's plan for a house. Imagine building a house without a plan. The kitchen might be far away from the dining room, or the house might have no windows. Having a plan not only helps you, the writer, to organize your thoughts, but it also ensures that you don't leave out anything important. You practiced making simple outlines, which look like this: a topic sentence, some supporting points, and a concluding sentence. A formal outline, however, with details might look like this. Notice the system of letters and numbers. Also notice that each group of letters and numbers is indented. Take a look at this. You have the topic sentence, you have the supporting point A and 3 details about the supporting point. You have the supporting point B and its own details, and supporting point C and the details plus the concluding sentence at the end. Now let's take a look at a detailed formal outline. You have the topic sentence and 3 supporting points with their own detail. In this detailed outline, supporting points A, B, and C support the topic sentence. Details 1 through 4 and 1 through 5 explain each supporting point. Of course, outlines are usually not as regular as these models. Every outline will probably have a different number of supporting points and a different number of details.